Good morning. Thank you. It's good to be back in Seoul. I obviously apologize. I cannot speak Hangul, so English is going to be the way you're going to be hearing this, but I'll try to speak slower. So as IDC clients, for many of you, you probably are going to be familiar with the futurescape and the predictions because we have been doing this for many years. And this year, the theme, as you can see here, is Mastering AI Everywhere in the Digital Business Era. This is a very important and very timely topic, in our opinion, because we are now in a very critical moment for the IT industry as well as for the rest of the economy across kind of all sectors. Now, this is a defining moment because we have not seen any technology other than generative AI where within the first year, not only did we see a lot of interest, but executive support. Right? In the past, what we have seen is a lot of interest in the first year, in the first 6 months, but not executive support. This is the first technology, and therefore, we decided that AI everywhere is going to be an important topic for us as an IT industry to really pay attention. There are going to be three topics that I'm going to be covering as part of this year's theme. And then the IDC Korea analyst team will come on stage and they will go a little bit deeper for each of the specific areas that is most important for this particular market. So the first is around the AI pivot. So we are obviously pivoting because it's a defining moment. We're pivoting and shifting to a completely kind of new era or new chapter of the digital business era. So some of you might think, how is it that, we are in the technology world and this technology like generative AI just suddenly emerged? The truth is, it's not a sudden thing, right? If you talk to people in the AI space, they will tell you that AI has been around for a long time, right? So for many, many years. And when we look at the history of the technology industry, which is shown on this slide, you can see that around the 2010 timeframe, we actually saw what we call the rise of multiplied innovation chapter, where mobility, obviously social, cloud, and the internet completely transformed the marketplace, right? So we saw cloud making computing elastic, mobility obviously making computing ubiquitous, and then internet obviously were able to distribute those computing bits very, very quickly, efficiently, at very, very low cost, in some cases, zero cost. So we saw that kind of built the foundation for us. Then we went into what we call the platforms and the communities chapter. And this was the period where technology industry talk about APIs, right? You connect to the ecosystem, basically using mobility and other type of digital application. So during this period of time, we actually saw massive data consolidation because more and more data being collected through ecosystem, through platforms, and through communities. And it was during this period that we actually began to see foundational model architecture being developed, including large language model. So those were actually already developed during that period of time. And then generative AI became that defining technology that pushed basically the entire IT industry into a completely new chapter, presenting new possibilities, new opportunities, and of course, in some cases, new challenges. So this is really the chapter that we are looking at. And this chapter will not only just be for 1 year or 2024, it will last for, in our opinion, the next decade. Which leads me to our first prediction. And that is with technology providers allocating half of the R&D, their people, their CapEx investments to AI and automation between now and 2026, CIOs will struggle to align with vendor selection and IT operation priorities with new use cases. Now, I want to highlight this because every conversation that we had with CEOs in Korea, in the rest of the world, the last 4 months, there are many messages, but there's one common message from the CEO community, and they say that basically generative AI is going to change the competitive landscape. It's going to be a level playing field, not only for the industry that they play in, but also for the IT industry. So your competitive positioning and your market share will actually increase or decline depending on how well you master AI everywhere. So thanks to the last 3 years of COVID, the pandemic, we saw basically an acceleration in terms of digital transformation maturity, or we call it DX maturity. So the last 3 years, whether you are a consumer company, your customer, or business organization, essentially your internal processes, your client engagement, your ecosystem play, you have actually accelerated in terms of digital know-how and digital processes. So we went through that. Then we are now in a period where the focus is around how do you create and how do you quantify business value through the use of digital technologies and the implementation of digital processes. So we talk about DX, we have seen customers and you have helped customers go through that process, but it's only the last 18 to 24 months that customers are beginning, more and more customers are beginning to say, how do I measure the value? And this is not just only about return on investment for project, but this is about creating new organizational value, whether this is revenue, this is cost reduction, this is margin expansion, this is creating a new partner ecosystem, and therefore creating new business models. So it could be any of the above, which is why we predict that by 2027, 80% of CEOs will assert that their C-suite technology leaders' primary function should be to invest in digital-first initiatives to deliver on digital revenue targets. So you notice that it's really about generating growth. It's not only just about cost optimization. It's using technology to do that. Now, then, for 2024, our expectation is that with generative AI, 2024 is going to be the year where we are going to see further acceleration of digital. That's for sure. So the last 3 years, if you think that the digital acceleration was really, really high, in 2024, because of generative AI, and it does not stop at just generative AI, it will propel the market even further, which is also why our estimate and our projection is spending on digital technology across hardware, software, and services by organizations will grow 5 times the economy in 2024. That means 5 times the GDP growth rate for South Korea, as companies are compelled by market demands to grow digital business models and to strengthen their digital capabilities. So the spending on digital technology will grow 5 times faster than the GDP for South Korea in 2024. Now, 2025 is going to be what we say in English, an inflection year, which is why we're pivoting. Inflection year means it is the year that is going to change things moving forward. 2025 is going to be the year where we will see AI everywhere becoming mainstream. Some of you might say, well, the conversations that we had, the engagements that we have with Korean customers this year, the response is very conservative, which is true. Korean customers generally are conservative on the enterprise side. Consumers, innovative, progressive, enterprise, conservative. The main reason for that is about data privacy and data protection, which I will talk about that as the second topic for this presentation. So you hold that thought. But we still believe that despite them being conservative, because of the new capabilities that are coming in, because of the foreign multinational competitors that are playing in this market, they are going to be moving faster because their exposure outside of South Korea is going to be a lot bigger, broader, faster. There will be some impact. And we also believe that you as a technology player, that because this is a defining moment, that you can change the competitive landscape, you will also become more aggressive. And you will be working with your customers to help them to embrace and try to master AI everywhere as quickly as possible. Now, our research the last 6 to 8 months, so we have been going out to the marketplace every month to understand customers' needs with regards to technology. And of course, the last 4 to 6 months, a lot of the questions were around generative AI and AI in general. And what we found to be a very, very important correlation is the more mature an organization is digitally speaking, so if their DX maturity is relatively high, they are more likely to be successful in embracing generative AI. That's what we notice. It's because digitally mature organizations, they would already have an AI strategy in place. And they would also have an AI roadmap. And what they need to do is really to evolve and to upgrade the AI strategy. And they are also the ones that will also come up with more use cases to pilot, to trial for Gen AI, and how that will change the entire AI kind of journey and roadmap for them. So this slide shows you basically the maturity of organizations from a digital transformation perspective. So we put them into 4 general buckets. The top basically shows you companies that are not digitally advanced. They are not even there yet. They would have started, but really they are very traditional. At the bottom is digital native. So these are obviously digital first organization. Some of them are startup companies, but they may not be startup companies. They are just very advanced in the way they use technology. And then you have the middle bits. So which is we are somewhat of a digital business, then part of their processes are already digital. Some of the revenues are already generated from digital products, services, and channels. And of course, then the third role is we're mostly digital business. So this is really very progressive company. So for Korea, you can see in the second column, 62% of the organizations are still at the somewhat digital business category, which is why relatively speaking, Korean enterprise customers are generally more conservative, okay? So you get to see 62 compared with Asia Pacific 51.8, and then you can see the rest of the region. So as a technology player, if you want to look for generative AI customers, you need to look for the bottom 2. So in the case of Korea, that's your 26 plus 4%. So 30% will be the ones that are basically, they would have already started generative AI. They would have already started looking at the use cases. But they are also challenging, right? Because they are very progressive. So you got to have really good capabilities and think through the process of how you are going to support and engage them. So, which is why, when we look at these 30% organizations particularly, and some of the 62%, for Korea, the percentage of organizations that are exploring or conducting proof of concept on generative AI is 2/3, is 66%. Asia Pacific is 81%. Okay, 81% of the companies are already experimenting, exploring. In Korea, there's about 2/3. Now, the chart or the graphic on the left side of the slide is basically an IDC graphic that we just created about 6 weeks ago. It's already on idc.com. And this graphic is created for your customers. Basically, it's our way of guiding your customers, regardless of industry, on how they should evolve their AI strategy to be able to embrace generative AI. And if they don't have an AI strategy, then they have to leapfrog. It's going to be a big jump for them. So I'll break it into 3 components. The first component on the left are the 4 key activities that companies would have to embrace, from responsible AI policy on who can actually use what data, what kind of data can you share, AI ethics, to strategy and roadmap, because you need to evolve and upgrade it, to moving your enterprise architecture to intelligent architecture, because AI is no longer just the software layer of the technology stack. AI is now the main technology across ICT, right? So that's the difference. And then, of course, reskilling and training of people, which I will explain a little bit later. Then you have the core technologies. So there are basically a number of layers in the core technology. You have your infrastructure layer, you have your platform and your data management layer, and then you have your AI application layer, and then you have your services layer. Okay, so that's essentially the technology stack. Then, of course, use cases are important. Customers talk about use cases. You're trying to partner with your customers to come up with use cases, and we put them into 3 different buckets. And these are the 3 different buckets: productivity, productivity, business function, which I use customer engagement as the key. And then you have industry, where there's a lot around new business models. So today, the majority of the use cases that are being experimented and have gone into production are productivity use cases. So you think about developer productivity, you think about knowledge discovery within organization. Those are the 2 very common ones. Then in the business function use cases, these are horizontal, like HR function, finance, call center, so on and so forth. Customer engagement is the most popular today in terms of getting customer insights. So we see that. And then on the industry side, which is more difficult to do, creating new business models and new operating models is definitely one of the hotter use case subcategories that we have seen. 2024 is going to be the year we are going to see the biggest battle among technology players in the industry use case category. Many of you, either on your own or through partnership, will be investing to push out industry use cases and large language models for your customers. Okay, so that will be the biggest battleground. So here we are predicting that as we get closer to the end of our forecast period, which is 2028, that 10% of the top Korean-based 200 organizations will experiment with what we call AGI, right? And systems that will have a transformative effect on society and create significant opportunity of threats. So AGI are essentially intelligent machines that can operate and think like human beings. That's what AGI is. You might think, well, this is very futuristic. But the top AI chief engineer of Google had just came out a month ago to say that in the next 5 years, there's a 50% chance this will become a reality. So you can see the market really pushing ahead. So because of this push in generative AI, we are now seeing an acceleration in overall AI, right? And if you can see that when we look at the investment or the technology split between the 3 different categories of AI, generative, interpretive, and predictive AI, generative AI in the next 12 months or 18 months is expected to be about 19%. It's not even the largest. But because of it, the entire AI market is going to actually move a lot faster. So therefore, our prediction here is by 2028, 80% of the CIOs in Korea will leverage organizational changes to harness AI, automation, analytics, driving agile, insightful, driven digital businesses. So the 80%, yeah? So by the end of the forecast period. And when we look at the business areas that are going to be most impacted by generative AI, you can see again from left to right here, product development design and software development design to be the top two. More and more companies are using generative AI to help them to change their portfolio, the design and the development of their production, and of course, software, because as we get digital first, software development, productivity is going to be super critical, not only for IT, but also for business people, right? Because if the productivity is very high, then you're able to launch the application faster, and that means there's a positive impact on your business. So I want to quickly talk about two examples. So Singapore Airlines, which is obviously from Singapore, and Dosan, which is obviously from Korea here. Both companies are doing different things, but there's a common thing here. They are both accelerating AI. In fact, yesterday, the CEO of Singapore Airlines have just actually talked about their push in AI, and they have identified 90 use cases in generative AI and broader AI as a result of this push. So Singapore Airlines was actually quite late getting into digital transformation. So they accelerated a lot during the pandemic years, and now they're really pushing into this AI everywhere chapter. Dosan, they have been doing quite a lot from a digital transformation perspective, but one thing that shows them pushing ahead for AI acceleration is they are making basically their employee base, not just IT, not just the data science people, they're making the entire employee base to be better educated with data science methodology and technology. So they are trying to create citizen kind of data scientists. That's how they call it throughout the organization. So the next section is about the great data grab. Because of AI pivot, we are also going to see this increase in terms of massive data consolidation. And so there are three kind of types of data, right? Or what we call the 3 V's of data. Volume, which we are going to expect massive growth of, especially for semi-structured and unstructured data. Velocity means the pace is definitely going to get much higher. That's why there is a need for GPUs. And then variety, right? Because you think about generative AI, it's about text, it's about images, it's about codes. It's not about numbers, right? So the variety is also going up. And when we ask organizations in Korea and Asia Pacific around, in the next 12 to 18 months, when you start to deploy and go deeper into generative AI projects, what are the top 3 initiatives? And they say here, data integrity. So this is about the quality of the data and how much you can trust the data. Open source guidelines, because there is a lot of open source large language models. And so they need to understand how they can actually do this and provide guidelines in terms of usage and adoption. And then, of course, AI Center of Excellence. More and more companies are creating or building out their Center of Excellence so that they can make it obviously a lot bigger. Which is why we're predicting that by 2025, 45% of CIOs will prioritize strategic data management and foster a data-centric culture, ensuring competitive differentiation in the digital era. The 2 codes that I have here is Singapore and Thailand. You can get it also in Korea. The message is very similar, that moving forward is really about data. A lot of banks already have data strategy, but they want to now make it more efficient, and that will be one example. But the number one concern by enterprises, which is a main reason why Korean enterprise customers are conservative, is this problem, which is protecting the data. Every CEO that I have sat down with the last 3 months, they say one thing other than the level playing field is, I really want to explore generative AI because I think there's going to be a lot of benefits. And I want to take third-party data into my organization to enhance the value, but I don't want to share my data. And I laugh. I'm like, how is that possible? That even if everybody does not share data, how are you going to get a lot of third-party data? So when you hear that there's a lot of data in the marketplace, most of the data sets are consumer, right? If you think about the naval, you think about the Tencent in China, you think about the Google, this is largely consumer data. Enterprise B2B data is more difficult to get your hands on, which is why when you think about, or your HQ think about a building industry large language model, you need to think about where you're going to get the data from, right? How are you going to make sense? So our research shows basically 4 key things that you need to pay attention when you talk to customers about generative AI. First is that there's a high preference for private AI models. They want basically the private version, cloud or non-cloud. So this could be on-premises, this could be dedicated cloud. That's their preference. Whether they have the money and the capability is a different question, but that's their preference. Okay, and really for them is to be able to harness their internal data. That's very important for them. How do I use generative AI to make my internal data smarter, better, create more value for the organization? How do I not expose my organizations as a result of using AI to risk in terms of compliance, risk in terms of brand and reputation, and therefore data integrity is so critical. So you need to really think about that. Now, the other thing that we saw from the platform and communities chapter is this widening adoption of what we call digital business platform. And which is why we predict that in 2028, organizations with established digital business platforms will have 50% higher digital market share with greater abilities to track return on investment and execute digital revenue initiative. More and more companies are now, kind of building ecosystem. Later, Min Kim will come and talk about ecosystem. She will go deeper into that. But I just want to kind of quickly talk about maybe the Korean examples. So Lotte Card is quite late into the space that they play in, which is really about providing card. So now they got into digital app. They're measuring monthly active user as a KPI for the entire management team. And for them is really having this ecosystem, and so that they can actually increase the number of not only digital user, but digital engagement. So they want to kind of use the platform to be able to do that. Reed is a AI startup in the education industry, and this country is big into education from elementary all the way up to pre-university. And they have actually used AI technology to make it more customized for each student. Based on their learning skill and their capability, they can actually create tests, curate tests for their level so that they can actually improve very, very quickly. This company, this startup is one that you should be paying attention to if education industry is one area that you're looking at. The other thing with regards to the great data grab is about the network effect of ecosystem. I think in tech industry, you're familiar with that. So if I use LG U Plus as an example, they have many initiatives. One of the initiatives, which they call Target Insight, is really how they can use AI and data to provide more accurate customer-centric insights for marketing promotions and to also be able to provide recommendations for customers. And the network effect for them is making their own employees smarter and be more data first, as well as the way that the recommendation to the consumer. So their customers and their employees bringing this whole ecosystem using AI and data to do that. So by 2025, 35% of organizations will be selling to, engaging with, provisioning on-demand services through digital ecosystems to enable new business models powered by AI everywhere capabilities. We are going to see this network effect be greater. And then finally is the IT industry shift, which has a direct impact on you, right? Your industry or our industry is obviously at this pivotal moment, and we are actually undergoing, and we will see this shift as we move forward. Last year at Futurescape, we talk about the transition from digital transformation to digital business as organizations become digital first. And so we talk about the impact of the tech industry. This year, just 12 months later, generative AI completely changed the dynamics. And so we thought we should release a 2.0 version of the 5 predictions that will really impact the IT industry, regardless of what layer of the technology stack that you play in. So the first is around infrastructure. So this CPU versus GPU. Developers are going to be looking at the different types of processes before they decide what use cases and what applications they develop. In the past, developers don't really care about that, right? They don't even look at the infrastructure, and infrastructure is being looked at by the infrastructure team. But now they have to do that because when you use GPU, for example, for generative AI, it's faster. It's able to crunch more data. There are some companies that are using their existing CPU for some of their generative AI use cases. It is possible, but it is slower. So you need to kind of determine, or your customer have to determine, what kind of use cases speed is not as critical. And therefore, CPU, which is widely available, can actually be leveraged. GPU, limited availability and incredibly expensive. So this is one area that we will see drastic shift in the developer community as well as the developers within the enterprise organization. The second is what we call interwoven IT. We are all familiar with workloads, right? Workloads is basically how different type of IT coming together to support and enable a workflow or a business process. But we're shifting that to what we call workflow priority. Workflow is more like basically the different tasks that are connected in a business process. That's what workflow. And the idea of shifting from workload to workflow priority is really about how, regardless of whether the IT system, what kind of system you use, what kind of platform, what kind of connectivity, what kind of architecture, it needs to all be able to connect and talk to one another for that workflow. So that's going to be really important as we move forward. The third is about autonomy, which is about self-healing. So this country is very familiar with automation. That's no-brainer. But now we're moving to the next level. Autonomous is about self-healing. That means the machine, the process itself, is able to make decision and correct itself and improve from there. That's what autonomy and autonomous is. And with generative AI, we will begin to see a lot of autonomy within the environment. Then the fourth is around new products and services. Technology already impacted that with IoT, with blockchain, with cloud, and so on and so forth. Now we are going to see intelligent-based or AI-based kind of business model, product design and development. If you remember, one of the top business use case or the top business use case for generative AI in the next 18 months is product design and development. And then the last is around data privacy, data protection. This is the one that you really need to pay attention because this is your number one concern of your customers. You need to figure out how do you give them that trust to work with you and to create that firewall between their first-party data and third-party data so that their data will not be leaked out in the marketplace. The final slide is an example that I want to close off. So in order to master AI everywhere, based on the 3 things that I talk about, you need to leverage AI pivot to create new competitive advantage. You need to scale your great data grab to deliver new business value. And you need to take advantage, you meaning the customer, need to take advantage of these changes in the IT industry to find new capabilities. You need to help your customers to figure that out, right? And so those are the 3 important elements for your customers to really master AI everywhere in the digital business era. And believe it or not, there are already some companies that are working towards that. They are already very close to mastering. And this is one of the few companies in the world. And this company is a Chinese company called Mengniu, M-E-N-G-N-I-U. Mengniu is the world's 7th largest dairy producer. So they produce dairy products like milk and cheese, right? That kind of products. They've always been big into digital transformation, and there are 3 phases to their DX approach. So they have completed the first 2, and now they're embarking on this 3rd phase. The first phase is where they have a lot of IoT and OT technology, their smart factories, where they actually collect a lot of data, which is why every cup of Mengniu milk that a consumer drink contains up to 170 million of data. That's a lot of data, right? So that's really the first step. Then the second phase, which they just completed, is how they make personalization part of their corporate DNA. And that's really about changing their production flow from product-centric to customer-centric. And for them is to be able to fully digitalize, not only in terms of their internal processes, but also in terms of their production. I'll just give you a quick data point. Their smart factories, each factory has about 100 people. The same size, same configuration in the competition requires 1,600 people. They have the highest and the most efficient usage of technologies in the dairy industry in the world because of the automation and the use of data. Now they are getting into this AI era where they have already explored large language model. They are creating their own large language model with their own first-party data so that they can actually increase the accuracy of their search and have a better understanding of their customer. At the end of the journey for digital transformation for them is to get into a fully utilized environment from the beginning of the production to basically the hands of the consumer. They want it to be fully digitalized and basically a very high level of autonomy and to be able to generate new revenue and of course increase their competitive market share in the world. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what we are predicting for 2024 and beyond. And I hope that you will get deeper insights and we build deeper relationship as we move forwards into 2024. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sandra.